Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my cozy stream about the new Cargo Line Volume 4 Military DLC for Trains in World 5. It is an unboxing stream today. Hey AJ, nice to see you on the chat. We will have a look at what we get from the new DLC. What services, what vehicles, what gameplay you can make out of it, and, well, we will see whether you like it or not. As always, here is the disclaimer. I got this key for free from Dovetail Games by virtue of being an ambassador for DTG, but this is the only incentive that I get from them. I'm not getting paid, and it is my unfiltered opinion, what you hear from me as usual. The Cargo Line DLCs typically give you some new cargo vehicles and some services and scenarios, usually on two different pre-existing routes that you obviously have to own, so that you can play the content that comes with the DLC. And so far there has been three, like I think petroleum, aggregates, and intermodal. I don't have the aggregates one. The other two I think I have, and now we have number 4, what is military equipment. So obviously something that might be an issue for someone to carry around armored personnel carriers and mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles. My mother never let me play with stuff like this when I was a kid. No war machinery, and now we're carrying it around on our train. Well, it maybe is a sign of the times that we have to accept gear like this being carried around in our countries to make sure that we can continue living in the peace that we have been gotten so used to during the decades past, and will be a catastrophe if we lose that again. So, well, everybody has to decide for themselves whether to buy a DLC that gives you some war machinery to carry around or not. Where you can find what the DLC gives you is one in the Great Western Express, probably the oldest DLC that there is at all for Trains in World, at least the oldest one that survived. And you find the stuff that comes with the DLC quite nicely packaged in the journeys, like Great Western Express. You find it here, Cargo Line, and then the name of the DLC, here the military, and then you have one chapter of services and scenarios, one chapter of journey mode, and you are carrying stuff along the line typically. Got to turn the music down a bit, it is always a bit harsh with the music. Yeah, so rail journey for Great Western Express, Cargo Line military, and then you have 3 scenarios and a couple of timetable services that end up there. And they have trains that run from one Ministry of Defense installation to the other. Obviously, typically those installations are not within the route, so we only get that part that is on the route. But obviously the train comes from an off-map location and goes to an off-map location. And in the Great Western Express, you run those services with a Class 66 shed locomotive, a new version of it Livery wise, it has the light red DB cargo livery. You can see it here. This locomotive comes actually with the DLC. Yeah, and you got those Warwell cars. The special about them, they are lowered in the middle so that you can get in quite large machineries and vehicles without violating the quite restrictive loading gauge in Great Britain. This is why they have this well in the middle where you can put in your gear, and then it runs on those bogies on both ends, so it looks like you're actually wasting some room, but this is because you have to get those big vehicles into the wells and to distribute the heavy weight that they have. Here comes a high-speed train in the beautiful Great Western Railways livery. And we have some snow on our machinery. And taking it from Shoeburyness to Marchwood. Why would end up here then? I'm not entirely sure. But this is what the scenario says that we are doing. So these vehicles, you can see they are 3-axled vehicles on wheels, not on tracks. And they carry armor typically, and from the description they are supposed to be mine resistant, ambush protected vehicles, so MRAP vehicles. And from what you can see and read, they decided not to actually mimic real vehicles, but make them kind of generic. Don't put weapons on them, only the armor, and it looks a bit like a Mastiff or a Wolfhound vehicle that the British Army uses. So for transporting like 2 crew and then 6 to 8 people here in the belly, protected from the bottom so that a mine cannot destroy the vehicle at best, and with wheels typically like not a 4x4 but a 6x6 wheel, so that all the wheels are driven separately to get along. Yeah, so you get those cars. Some of them can be empty, some have those MRAP vehicles on them. I leave the scenario again to switch over to the other part of the DLC, Preston Carlisle, a beautiful route from Just Trains. And here we have the other half of the services. Here you actually get a special timetable containing those services. There are, from what I have seen, even a couple of services more than there is in the journey that comes with it. Here, West Coast Mainline, Preston Carlisle, a really long one, a long route. And here we have a military journey chapter. You can see again we're running services from MOD, Ministry of Defense location, to other Ministry of Defense location. We have scenarios. I have not been able to play all the scenarios. You can see they are quite long. Some of the services are rated with more than 2 hours, and from experience really playing the services and scenarios actually takes a bit longer than they are rated for. And here you're not using the class 66 locomotive, but a class 47 locomotive, one that comes with the DLC. And for example, let's take this one here, start at Preston, and have a look at what it looks like. I think we're starting in the rain here. And here, if I am not mistaken, we should have the different kind of armored vehicle that comes with the DLC. It is a tracked vehicle. an APC, an armored personnel carrier, sometimes referred to as a battle taxi. So an armored vehicle that is below being a battle tank. Germany would call it a Schützenpanzer. Yeah, you can see tracked and then armored. Looks a bit like a little tank without a real turret on top. And here you can fit in your infantrymen, crew of 2 typically, one who drives, the other one operates a machine gun that is typically mounted on top of this stuff. And well, looks to me a bit like an FV432, World War II and Cold War era fighting vehicle of the British Army, but I am no expert on these things, so don't quote me on that. Maybe it's a totally different vehicle. Again, it is a generic thing and not a real vehicle that is depicted here for whatever licensing or whatever reasons they found it appropriate not to use real war machinery here. The Warwell cars, heavily weathered, are also cars that were built in World War II era, more or less, and since then used heavily. Handbrake works, and you have this indicator telling you whether the handbrake is on or off. We have screw-link couplings, and those cars, they are a bit bitchy to brake from what I've seen. So, what I was going to do before we actually play a service, I have prepared a little presentation about the locations that come up in the routes. So don't worry, it will not be a long presentation, but it is always interesting, in my opinion, to know what we are talking about. So this is a map of South England, more or less, without Cornwall. And our route, the Great Western Express, here starts at London Paddington and goes up to Reading. In the DLC, obviously, it goes until Bristol in real life, but we have this part in our DLC and in the game. And where are now the locations that the services are supposed to connect? We have this Shoebryness installation that is here in Essex, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So this is actually the point where my geography of the UK is put to the test. So here, a harbour town in Essex at the east coast. Then we have the Warminster MOD as a location. What is here? That is Wiltshire, I think. Marchwood next to Southampton in Hampshire. That is easy again. Bicester MOD in Oxfordshire. That is also easy because it's close to Oxford. Kyneton in Warwickshire, if I remember correctly. This area here, then it's close to getting to Birmingham. And here is a little village that has a military installation nearby. So you can see that the locations that we are connecting are actually a bit removed from our line, and they are connecting those locations and running through the line for the Great Western Express. For the Preston Carlisle, we have some additional locations in the north. So this is the route. You can see that how long this route is in this DLC from Carlisle to Preston. And there is one location quite close to Carlisle, a Longtown MOD, and one that is quite close to Lancashire, Lancaster, in Lancashire, obviously. Longtown in Cumbria. And this is Hesham, if I can pronounce that correctly. It's quite close to the line here. So here we could actually take it. And then there is one location. If I found the correct location, then there is an ammunition depot in Argyll, in Scotland, close to Loch Lomond. It's the Glen Douglas. Maybe there is an N too much or too many in my presentation here. I apologize for that in advance. And by the way, while we are here on this map, what is that? What is that? Yeah, Thomas has been fixed. I can now play the 80th anniversary of Thomas the Tank Engine. And this is actually the location of the island of Sodor, where Thomas and his friends are running around. Their trains are obviously fictitious, but that is the location where this all happens between the Isle of Man and Cumbria. Okay, back with Thomas. This is again some serious stuff about the military stuff that we are carrying around. And well, whatever, let's go into the West Coast main line and use this rainy service starting at Preston that has the highest difficulty rating for whatever reason. We will see. I have not played it before, so it's something new, and that means I have to turn on the DLC marker of Preston Carlisle. And turn off my presentation, obviously. And the service is just the DLC name today. So let's just play the service and see what it has to say to us. Maybe I should turn on the sound again next time. I will turn off the music earlier so that I don't have to shout. So in hour 47, welcome aboard 6MOO for the final leg of its journey up from the MOD storage facility at Acton in Warwickshire. Keys on. Safety systems are located up here. Two difficult to find switches. Unisolated and on. And now we should actually... Here are our wipers. No, park, we don't need it, we run. The headlight is already on. Marker lights are on. The instrument lights, called deck lights here, can be turned on. Then we switch to the straight brake and overcharge our locomotive brake system. Maybe take down the volume a bit and now check the train to ensure it's ready. So we can actually see what we are running. We are running air brakes, goods timing. That means the brakes are releasing and applying slower. And we're carrying this one carriage that is typically used for parcel trains, if it is not needed for military trains like this one, and a couple of our Warwell cars with the APCs. Turning or looking backwards as they are put on the cars here. At least I think they are looking backwards here. I think this is the front of those vehicles. We have the road. The train is made up of 20 well wagons carrying APCs at roughly 900 tons and will be limited to 60 miles per hour. Okay, and this is something that the game will actually enforce. We are limited to 60 miles. Correspondingly, we have a 6M head code. A 6 head code indicates that we have a top speed of not higher than 60. Alright. And let's go. Large loco version of the 47. And we are started in running. For some reason now I'm back at overview. For a short time I always ended up in options when I hit the escape button. Now it is back again. Well, nice. Not only Thomas has been fixed, but also this 15 miles. Sometimes it is as if secretly they are reading what I'm writing on the chat. After all. But maybe it's just coincidence. We're starting at 15, I said, right? And then we will increase to 25 at some point. We know Preston Station from the Blackpool branches. Unlike in the Blackpool branches, we will not go to the left when we are passing St. Walburge, but to the right on the West Coast main line. Throttle lever does not really want to stick at something smaller than 26%. Interesting. Either it is on or it is 26%. Makes sense. Can't confuse the diesel. Cars at the end of the train are empty. Wells are empty. And what you can see easily at some point when running those services is that the 47 is not a machine that can accelerate those cars to a faster speed than 60 easily. So you need to have a stretch of track where you're running downhill to get anywhere near that. St. Walburge, St. Mark's, I think, in the background. And now we turn to the right on the West Coast main line, heading for Lancaster. Spectre, hey Tiger, let's haul some heavy stuff, right? Yes! And let's haul it with the 47. And if there is time at the end, let's haul it with the 66, closer to London. I don't know if you're an expert on war machinery, Spectre. Whether you can tell me what exactly, what type of APC those little tanks are. I think that they gave it a more generic appearance. Not really, I was in the German army for some months, but not an expert. Yeah, same here, I was with the German army for some months as well. Actually for a whole year. American M103s. Yeah, that might be. But I would guess that it is some British machinery that we are carrying around. In my opinion, they look a bit like FV432s. But there are so many versions of these vehicles. Well, let's accelerate a bit and get this train up to speed. M113. Yeah, as I said, I'm totally not a wargaming guy. I think they just had to pick some generic version. They do not have guns either, probably because of the PEGI rating, yes. Yeah, it's totally okay. I don't need guns on my trains. So we're going from Kyneton to Longtown, and Longtown is just north of Carlisle. Here comes an intermodal train, probably from the Cargo Line 3, but I'm not entirely sure. The containers had a look to them that made me think that I have not seen them outside of a Cargo Line DLC. Same here, at the end of the day I'm not fussed with cargo. I am driving around, just adds a bit variety, which is good. Yeah, and it looks nice, I have to say. If you look at those MRAP vehicles with the snow on them, they could also be used for exploring the wilderness, unlike those guys here. But from what you can read, those things are also used for rescue operations. CD Radar has only once seen the couch cushions. Well, if it was about my couch cushions, I would strongly suspect Kara. And now I actually have to reduce the power a bit, because we are actually getting closer to our 60. And you can see the game is enforcing a 60 limit for our train. What makes sense with what we are loaded with. So are we down? Well, we're on a slight downhill run. Let's open the window so that we can enjoy the sound of the running gear. Locomotive does not have a DSD or vigilante system running. What happens if we... Yeah, we only have a dead man's pedal that activates the brake as soon as we let go of it. And you can see as soon as those cars get something in their brake cylinders, they are slowing the train down heavily. That was just slipping off the dead man's pedal and applying pressure again. Alarm light went off. And the goods brakes on those cars almost stall us. Do you have all the DLCs available now? Asks CD Radar. No, I have not. I am missing about 25 DLCs if my count is correct. And I think I will fill the gaps within the next year or two, one by one. So as an ambassador you don't automatically get all the old DLCs, you get the new ones, but the old ones you have a certain limit of DLCs that you can request during a certain period of time. So you have to choose wisely what you want to get. Oh, Abyss, hey, a bit late, but I have arrived. Hope you're doing well. We are fine, Abyss, thank you. I hope you are as well. Spectres is the poor guys who drive the vehicles are sitting in the first coach. Oh yeah, well, at least they don't have to sit in their tanks while on the road. So I think now the brakes have released and we can accelerate properly again. Not sure if GB has mandatory military service. I don't think they have. At least not outside of wartime. So Abyss, are you a war gamer? Can you tell us what exactly, what kind of vehicle those APCs are that we are carrying around? Or what kind of APC they are more or less, yeah, sculptured after. You're asking too much, I have no clue. Okay. So my best guess so far is a FV for Fighting Vehicle 432. But apart from that, your guess is as good as mine. At any rate, they are armored personnel carriers, battle taxis. Something that in Germany would call a Schützenpanzer, according to my limited military knowledge. Typically used to carry small groups of infantry to the battleground or back again, letting them out. But I assume there's info somewhere on which type of cargo you can transport, or does it just not go that much into detail? In this case, it does not go that much into detail, and I think this is deliberately so that we don't get too much into the wargaming corner here. So they have generic machinery and no guns mounted, no turrets, no weapons in the actual sense. Only armored vehicles. And we can always paint a red cross on them, right? And then we have rescue vehicles. This was an 87, I think, from the Preston Carlisle route. You might have noticed that we have overhead catenary here, and the 87, if I don't mix up the numbers here, is the first electric locomotive, the first British electric locomotive that we have in the game. We do not have that many. We don't have that many locomotives of the more modern variety anyway in the game. But this is because modern trains in Great Britain are EMUs, DMUs, and not so much locomotives. The CD radar says army vehicles in trains in world is like buses in ETS. In the European Truck Simulator, I guess. And there are buses. They are only depicted in a general way. And Eternal Abyss says Team page only lists that the wagons have APCs and MRAPs, but indeed does not specify the model, yeah. And on the fandom page, I think they got it mixed up and the wrong way around. They call the APCs MRAPs and the MRAPs APCs. What confused me in the beginning. Why they are calling our little tracked vehicles here 3-axled mine resistant vehicles. Still on our way to Lancaster. City that lends its name to this county here, Lancashire. And you guys might not have been here when I discussed all the place names that come up in these DLCs, where the military installations are, that we are connecting with those services. Well, we started in Warwickshire, a village called Kyneton, and went all the way north, probably along the West Coast Main Line through Birmingham, until we took over at Preston. Spectre says, I think he read something about this mine resistance technology. Pretty clever. Deflects the shape of the truck, deflects the blast somehow. I still would not want to sit on. I like shoeburyness. Yeah, but I think it is called shoeburyness. Unfortunately, we have not seen Lofty around, because they typically can tell us how those names are pronounced. So it's Shoebryness, or even only Shoebury without the ness. Eternal Abyss is absolutely bonkers with the naming, but then again some names of villages, towns in my country are even worse. Yes. Even if you knew Slovene, you could not pronounce it properly. But we can't. I think there is no one who can say that there are no weird names where they are living. So if you look at Dresden, Riesa, and all those names, Kötschenbroda, and stuff like this, is weird enough. And External Abyss, exactly, is this. Spectre says useless internet knowledge. Shoebryness is known to be the driest town in England with an average precipitation of 527 millimeters, respectively 20.8 inches per annum. Alright, good thing they are so close to the sea that they don't need to get their water from the sky. So by the way, why did I take and pick a service with all the rain after we complained that it always starts raining when picking the dynamic weather? Not exactly sure. FPS wise we do not have really a problem. The Preston Carlisle DLC has a really long line. Most of it is our twin track though, because we're connecting Preston via Lancaster, cutting through Cumbria to Carlisle, almost at the Scottish border. CD Raider says, do you live in Birmingham? No. And in what part of Birmingham do you not live? Yeah. You're confusing us again. So we're getting closer to Lancaster. Yeah, but I don't think Morecambe is there. We'll have to see whether those tracks that are in the DLC here are actually getting us to Hesham, or whether this is some different track. Eternal Abysses. I think the answer to that is yes, and the answer to Spectre, who am I, and if yes, how many? There was a 47 in the intercity. A 47? Not necessarily, at least. There was a locomotive in the intercity livery. Did not check whether it had pantographs, probably it had. It's actually a super pretty landscape that we are running through. Unfortunately we can't see because Tiger decided to pick a service with all rain and no cattle. Maybe it is clearing up. It is scripted weather in the scenario, so maybe. WWII is a CD radar. Can you use the command to change weather mid-session? Maybe I actually can do that if I access the console, but I've never tried. And even if I knew the commands to do that, I don't know if that works in a scenario. Wheels are turning at any rate. In the petroleum cargo line DLC there is one set of cars, I think the green ones, where the wheels are not turning. At least they did not for me when I looked into that DLC a couple of days ago. So at any rate we're getting closer to Lancaster. Interesting name question again. Why it is not called Lancastershire, but Lancashire here. In Leicester it is called Leicestershire. Now we actually need a bit more brakes, otherwise we will slip into overspeeding. That happens if you don't know your dynamic profile of the route properly. Just got it so much. Ah, here's a dip into Lancaster. Shap Summit in 31 miles. A class 101 on the other track. And somewhere around here you can turn to the left to get to this Hesham installation. That is one long trip in it. Yes, I think it is a one long trip. I picked it because it has the highest difficulty rating. Even though those difficulty ratings are sometimes a bit surprising. They give it a higher difficulty rating because it is a long service. A quite short scenario on the Great Western Express has only a difficulty rating of 1, and then you have to stop all the time at red lights and stopping your heavy train. At least to me seems to be more difficult than just running the line for 2 hours. Now we're still on our way down. Since we do not have dynamic brakes, we have to do sawtooth braking. Here is a junction. I don't know if that is a real one. Yeah, it is a real one. It takes us over to Morecambe. What is lending its name to Morecambe Bay, the part of this Irish Sea that is touching, almost touching the West Coast main line around here. But we will get there, I think. So if you guys get bored with the 47 in the rain, we can also skip this service here and go to the other one. Here, this is Morecambe Bay. This is not just one big lake, if I'm not mistaken, but part of the Irish Sea. And I think those are the things that just trains are to be celebrated for. Look at the interior of this signal box here, sculptured. It has a board telling you how things are set. Hest Bank level crossing frame. Has this old school stove and radio. And I think this is collectible, no? Ronnie's. This thing, probably not operative, but it is there. No golf bag though, suspected. True. Well, Canto up 87, I think. Yeah, well, people in the north don't need the driver's reminder application by shooting golf balls against their heads. So after almost touching Morecambe Bay, we are cutting through Cumbria to the left, that piece of land where the Lake District is. And to the right, probably more or less Yorkshire. Fortunately, I have never been to this part of England. I've been to Scotland, I've been to the south of England, I've been to Ireland, but never been to the north. Golf ball resistant armor vehicle suspected. Well, that's true. A GRAV. Professional tourists, says CD Raider. What would you say about improving the Discord server? Add more rooms, some relevant roles. If you are volunteering to do this, CD Raider, and if AJ can explain to me how this is done, I am up for it. Well, good luck, AJ. Well, I could figure it out on my own probably, but I get annoyed with this stuff easily. Well, if AJ wakes up again, I will ask her whether she can make you and her moderators on my Discord, and then you can do stuff. My Discord server actually started out to be not more than a platform to share the stuff that Open-Minded and me made long before I started streaming. Seems now we are going uphill. Yeah, definitely looks like it. For example, the CD raid, I would appreciate the room to share train spotting photos. Fine with me. Next time I get AJ, I ask her how to make you and her moderators for this purpose. Right, even with full throttle, or I'm always reluctant to put it on full. I always switch it back to 93 or 95 or 96 or whatever you can do. Bardic lamps. Yeah, well, I think I know why I picked this rainy service, because for me war gear is always connected with rain and mud and somehow sad. At any rate, we're not running into any traffic. Nobody gets annoyed by us sneaking along the line with 60 miles. Cruise Inspector. Bivak wipes coming up. Look at how different all those coaches are. Flashlight just like in Wiener U-Bahns in CD radar. Flashlight in Wiener U-Bahn? Like this one. Whoop, 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 whoop. The train in front of you is too slow, you can... Kannst ihm die Lichthupe geben. There actually is some cattle. Sheep. Sitting out there in the rain. Yeah, they have that little red flashlight pointed to the front, behind front window in the cab. Alright. And what is the purpose of this? It indicates that the car alarm is on, right? In case anyone intends to nick a subway train. City Reader, I quote the answer. Yes, that's a flashlight which the driver can use whenever he needs it, but won't be used most of the times, because even if he would have to step out the train in the tunnel, he usually turns on the tunnel light. However, it is possible to use it as a regular flashlight. It can also be switched from white to red light in case the train head light is broken. I see. That's why it is on that position. So it's a replacement in case our lights are broken. We can still use the Bardic lamp. Let's see what that looks like if we turn off our headlights and the marker lights. Well, maybe it looks more impressive on Vienna subway. Cute. Never seen it in action, he said. At any rate, this is something that we could do. Up. Card kicked away. Nice little footpath crossing. Apparently we're going downhill again. We're drifting towards the 60 miles per hour. Cows. So on Sunday we will see this line again, but then without the rain. So we can do the O and R's properly. Abyss, do you know what's like the max incline allowed on railways? This depends on the railway, actually. For normal gauge railways, you can find some of them. So in my experience with normal gauge railways, you can hardly find a railway that is going beyond 3 per mil. And even that is really steep already. The steeper it gets, especially the decline, because typically the incline is not the problem, but the decline, right? Problem with if the incline is too strong, then maybe the train stalls. But if the decline is too strong, then you got a runaway scenario. And a stalled train is an annoying thing, and a runaway scenario is a catastrophe. So you can look at the brake tables. Yes, the brake tables that we have discussed in some of the videos, and there you can find values for how the top speed gets limited by the decline percentage. And if you don't get values for your Bremshundertstel in those brake tables, then in this combination of well, then you cannot go a higher speed than you get Bremshundertstel values for in the brake tables at a certain incline. And derailment pending, yeah. But in the narrow gauge railways you have sometimes inclines, declines up to 6, I think is the maximum on the Alrosa narrow gauge railway. So 6 per mil. What is an insane value for normal gauge trains. And beyond that, 6%. Yes, Spectre, thank you. You're right. At 6%, 60 per mil. 7% with the Jinglone. Yeah, when I said not more than 3 per mil, it is actually not more than 30 per mil. You typically get it in per mil. But I got confused by one step. So a normal gauge railway typically not more than 30 per mil, and on narrow gauge not more than 60, and 70 with the jingle. And Abby said, oh, I thought you said percent, so it's fine. Well, then we are on the same page, because 3 per mil is obviously something that you can take quite easily. And the harshest inclines on a normal gauge railway I think you can find on the Clinchfield Railroad in the game. If you play the limited power scenario on the Nora branch, it's sometimes even beyond the 3%, I think. But this is a coal working railway in the 70s. Nobody would take any passengers up these lines, I guess. And anything beyond that, you need those, don't know, what are they called? Either funiculars or what you call in German die Zahnradbahnen, that run with a either connected to a rope in the tracks or with a big cog running on, yeah, something that is in the middle of the track. This camera gets kicked around quite a lot. More cows. I want to see one of those animated cows, but maybe they are not in this DLC here yet. Ah, look at those Lambrig crossing. Maybe the reason why I picked this rainy service is that I like the rain so much. Ronnie, yes, seatbelt signs off, feet up, and hello, Mr. Tiger. Hey, Ronnie, nice to see you on the chat. Today, unfortunately, there is nothing about the DB regulations to be discussed. It is just unboxing our military trains with our APC vehicles running from Preston to Carlisle. So very relaxed. That's fair, he says. We would have needed you last week for the Halbregelabstand. Tough nut, not gonna lie, that's a funny one, he says. Yeah, and I'm afraid it is not implemented properly in the game. Around Mainz Castell. But maybe I'm wrong there, and it is implemented properly. Ah, come on, now you're pushing it even for my standards. Yeah, well, the thing is, you can always think, well, that's a bug again, and then For some weird reason, it's not a bug at all, and it's correct. I actually thought they would introduce the Halbregelabstand properly, because they are doing so much with Kennlicht recently. Up until a couple of months ago, you never saw a Kennlicht in the game. And then, all of a sudden, dispatched versus Kennlicht. Tell that to the people always complaining about the Bauer 101 expert bugs. Alright. Well, that is another thing that we have to look into, the expert Bauer 101. So far I only used some screenshot when I discussed the PZB and Indusi variants. Because the one version of the Expert 101 has a LZB 80 data input machine. When Expert ICE? Well, I will ask them. If I have the opportunity, I will ask them when we get an Expert ICE. Then we will actually get the opportunity to hear the Störung voice thingy for a reason, and not only during the self-test. By the way, Ronnie, now that we have you on the chat, the ICE in the game typically goes through this voice thing, self-test, and then it says something EB gesperrt, EB gesperrt, and we have never been able to figure out what actually is gesperrt there. Is it EB? EP? The fact that they try to implement an LZB Übertragungsausfall on the Fulda route is quite neat. Yes. They already did that on the Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel-Würzburg. There is a scenario with an LZB. LE, LE, yeah, that accent, this northern Franconian accent. It says VB gesperrt. Ah, which you'd hear if they are actually, in fact, gesperrt. Alright. You should not hear it during... So this is the Wirbelstrombremse. VB gesperrt. But that should then only come up on an ICE that actually has an eddy current brake, right? The 406 and the 403. Yeah, 406 and 403. VB. So Spectre, finally we know. And in the game, I think it is correct that it says so, because Eddie is shut out. Don't tell this to Iron Maiden. Eddy current. Only the 403, 406, yes, and only if they would be in fact either not intact or well gesperrt. Zum Beispiel, wenn es im Fahrplan, yeah, if the timetable orders you to not use the eddy current brake. So I wonder how they got to this self-test part. But if all is well, it shouldn't say it, no. Alright. Suspect of one of the oldest mysteries of Köln-Aachen finally unveiled. What is the train telling us? While we are getting closer to our Shap Summit, Spectre mystery solved. I would have thought it could be almost every combination of letters, yeah, except for VB. Maybe I should see an H and O, Doctor. So what is the English term for an H and O doctor? A doctor that deals with throat, nose and ears. And Ronnie begs for a Velaro and a Neo. Yeah, I guess they are really reluctant of introducing trains like this. Well, they got the ICET for Trains in World 5. What I really like to see in the game is a Spanish train with Talgo trucks. That is such a weird concept. There is so many things wrong with that 411, the ICET. So what is wrong? Tell us. In August I might have the opportunity to talk to the developers in person. At least as long until they shut me up. If you open the FB menu, it shows that what's already been clear to most nerds, that this is in fact a copy-paste 403. Yep. It has 2 more Antriebe than it should have. Ah! Okay. Well, it actually started to have an eddy current brake on this screen until I complained on the forums, and then they actually fixed it. One of the occasions when I actually felt heard. Yes, I have seen it, so it was you after all. It is a magnetic track brake, yes, Spectre. It also had 8 cars in that screen. So, now we're getting in a pretty steep incline. Let's check for abyss how steep that is. 13 per mil. What is already quite heavy for our machine. It is slowing us down below the 35. Sheep, rain, railways. .5 miles to the summit. And there is still no indication for the rain to stop. I keep saying this, just give me a train on par with flight sim study level planes. Well, it will be interesting how all this works and fits together. Because they actually have quite a lot of real-life train drivers in their beta team among their ambassadors. But I still have not completely understood how this information is processed between all of them. So, Summit. Isn't that a nice bridge? Almost there. Abby says need to get some food, but I lurk till the end. Enjoy your food, Abyss. So nice of you to stay with us. I know Scoff, the person that provided the original 423 infos. Ah, I see. And what would you think? Is it a problem with the information that this person provided, or that the information gets watered down in the process. I always thought the 423 is a weird train. In the game as in reality. A bit of both, I'd say, yeah. Coming back to the information provided, and it got watered down in the process. .423 is funny, says Ronnie. Fairly logical train to learn. So what makes it a fairly logical train to learn the driving on the 423? In the game I always think you have to apply a lot of brakes to stop this train. And then all of a sudden, it brakes like a bumper car. Oh. Well, to put it simple, same with the 403, you only have to know half the train because it mirrors in the middle. Ah, I see, yeah. So you don't have to get used to driving in the loco and then driving in the cab car. Driving is really off in game anyhow, alright. Expect that the original 403 would be cool to have as a DLC for Left Rhine in IC or Lufthansa Airport Express livery. Oh yeah, that's a nice idea. Well, unfortunately I will never find out how it feels to actually drive a train in real life. You could source it off the 420. The cab looked fairly similar. Interesting. But I thought those are completely different trains. Nope, they even shared the same electric motor base, the 420 and the original 403. There is no end to the things that you can learn. I'm sure TSG is doing a great job on the 420. Yeah, for the 20 I'm looking forward to that one. And I have one of the original Arbeitsmappen for the 420, so I will bother you with the old pictures out of this again as soon as we got it. And Ronnie will judge that on the 420. I expect it's cool. Hopefully we'll get somewhere to drive it in. Yeah, not sure S-Bahn Frankfurt will have it on console. Yeah, that is actually so annoying that you have to think about things like this now, but I don't think that it will appear only on Frankfurt S-Bahn. And running 420 is one of the trains I'm fairly happy to see, as for all of my trains that am or was at some point allowed to drive in real life. That's actually funny because the 420 is a train that I do not recall at all in real life, even though I must have seen it. Because it must have been around. But this is, well, probably due to the fact that I did not really pay attention a lot on trains before I got Train Sim World 2 for free on Epic Games Store a couple of years ago. So why did we get so much break? No. And not before. Spectre says when it came out in 1972 it must have been Ike manned spaceflight taken into consideration at other trains around that time. Ronnie says my old instructor says it was amazing, but he's glad he doesn't have to drive it nowadays. So we're getting a thunderstorm now after all. So this Preston Carlisle route is so long that you can actually forget where you are and just run the line. was that? It was a bumpy bit. But we were allowed to go 60 here. Crossing the motorway for once. I wonder what actually happens at the end of this scenario, whether we get somewhere close to this facility in Longtown, or where we actually get stopped then, because we are passing Carlisle as it looks. The weather is so mind-numbing, says Ronnie. How long is that route? That route is really long. I don't know how many miles. 74 miles or something like this. I think it is if you drive from Carlisle to Preston. And in the rain and with the wiper noise, woof, 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 woof. Mind-numbing. I find this extremely soothing. With the rain and the wilderness around us. And we will see more of Preston Carlisle as soon as I looked deeper into what this route provides us with in terms of signaling, safety systems and technology. As you can hope for with just trains, you get a lot of different liveries. Then we can also discuss what stations we're actually passing through on our way. Woof. See, this probably wasn't the best idea to drink iced coffee before bed. Because now you're cold, or because now you've got your caffeine in the head and in the veins. Sounds like a great idea to me this time. Yeah. Should not have replaced your nightly shot of Cofola with some iced coffee. Sounds like train driver's normal life choice. Well, I actually wonder how those freight drivers do that, driving for hours and hours with relatively slow speeds. Not so much change in speeds. Never stopping, except for the odd signal, letting a train pass. Shut up, Kofu. Kara, hi. Yes, Spectre, your name is strange. In the beginning there was a lot of container traffic and now there's almost no AI. Maybe this is because the southern part of the line is used more heavily. I guess the part between Lancaster and Preston is, in general, the more busy part of the line. Now I'm actually not sure whether we are already past Penrith. That is how you pronounce that town. With the castle. Or whether this is still to be passed. What does it say? Well, we're running downhill. Here is as Tiger's last train to Clarksville. Last train to Carlisle, not Clarksville. Actually, it would be great to be able to run the line to this Glen Douglas ammunition depot in Argyll that we've seen on the map in the beginning of the stream. That would take us further on past Glasgow and then out in the Loch Lomond area. Actually, no idea where the train line goes there. Carlisle. Well, I would venture to say that there will not be too many players who run each and every service in this DLC. But I like it. I like those long, uneventful runs. But this might be because I came into the game with running the train across Sandpatch Grade, down Cajon Pass, or across Sherman Hill. Let's make some event the CD radar. So what event are you thinking of? Honk the horn until AJ wakes up again. And I have to admit, I love this sound of this diesel engine and the running gear on the 47 and the other old British diesels. This is so soothing after a long day of work. A bit like driving in the car at night and rain when you were like 4 or 5 years old, going home, falling asleep, waking up, hearing the rain on the roof. No care in the world. Because your parents will take you home safely, and if you're asleep in the end, they will carry you inside. So this is a bit bringing back this feeling. Even now that we are running war machinery to a long town in Cumbria, for whatever reason, we do that. Thunder. But look, even though we have a thunderstorm, we have green FPS. So we are so close to Carlisle that we have a period in the indication of how long it still is. 7.9 miles. Those straps must be pretty tight actually, because those vehicles are not moving a bit. Here is another train, but no intermodal train, passenger IC train. Also the sound that those diesel engines do when idling, this oh 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 oh, always reminds me a bit of a dog panting. Inspector says my dog has just jumped on the sofa and is watching with interest. He says I should say hi to Kara. Hi Kara from Spectre's dog. Oh, she's lying next to me. Maybe the dog also thinks that the idling noise of our prime mover is a bit like a dog panting. Here's a pipe going across. But all this tells us that we're going back into civilization. Less than 4 miles to Carlisle. What I'm missing a bit is that those tanks should maybe nod and sway a bit. Like the cars are moving against each other, but the tank is just sitting ramrod straight. So especially the wheeled ones, they should move a bit in their suspension, right? Or do you block the suspension if you put those vehicles on trains? I don't know. Do I have to slow down at Carlisle? I have to slow down actually to 15. From what it looks like, or 20? 20 maybe. Let's see if we get a warning for that. Maybe they even signal us down. Oh, did you see the old Morecambe board? Indicating 20. Let's see if we get the brakes released again. Before the train stops. Well, almost. At any rate, we got the speed down to 20 in time. Probably a bit early. We're still running downhill and without brakes on. And here we are aiming for the 20. Good thing that I have the overview again on the escape button. I could swear yesterday it was always getting me to the options button. Rolling into Carlisle. And the signal, after 2 hours, we finally got a double yellow. And it is sending us through track 1, as it seems. Harrison's home care. Oh no. Now I was speeding probably. After all. No, it was merciful. And now we stop at Kingmoor Yard. That means we're actually not going up to Longtown. But we're stopping in the yard just to the north of Carlisle. And somebody else will take over and take the train out of the map. And the last bit to Longtown. There is a Maya Maganet. Is it already blah? No, signal cleared. Going into the siding. Well, those containers look actually nice, I think. Still 1.1 miles to go. That RAP 1 is not our target signal. Another switch. But 20 miles is alright for the yard, obviously. Apparently. So, signal ahead is yellow. I sometimes look at the dashboard and think, where is the sunflower, by the way, on this train? And then it has this really big sunflower here. And now the yards are counting down. Are we still good? No, we can go even faster than 20. But why should we? The yard. And now this is the AWS magnet for the red signal. Thanks, driver. A local crew from Longtown will take the train from here into the MOD site further north. Yes, was a pleasure to take this train all the way from Preston to Carlisle. How long did it take us? Time taken 2 hours and 18 seconds. Actually felt a bit longer. And fine. No bonus. No wipers in the rain. No speeding. Everything. 24,495. At least you get some points for those 2 hours. Distance walked 0 yards. That's how it is supposed to be. So, guys, just a little recap in case you missed the presentation at the beginning. Where we actually traveled and what happened in our service that we just went. This is the south, obviously, and we started at this location, I think, Bicester. No, we did not start at Bicester. We started at Kyneton in Warwickshire and went all the way through Birmingham and then to Preston, and then we took over and went all that way from Preston to Carlisle through Lancaster is here, and then all over there. And this is where the train is taking now. So this is the little gap that the local crew will take over. We did not go to Heysham, and unfortunately we did not go all the way up to Glen Douglas MOD here in Argyll. Well, just to round it up, and now I think I will call it a day. Everyone has fallen asleep anyway. This is the cargo line 4 with the military vehicles. Let's go to the main way. Abby smiles. Yeah. No, we didn't, Cecilia Raider. You did not fall asleep. Well, then we can go on. Then we can play another service in the Great Western Express DLC. There is a short scenario that is only rated with 30 minutes. Recently played. Where is the Great Western Express? Warblocks 15 in a future release, hopefully. For all the way to Glen Douglas MOD. Warblocks 15, thank you so much for appearing on the chat and also for your subscription with Prime. It did not go unnoticed at all. So, this one, Warminster to Shoeburyness. That little bit along the Great Western Express line. And what did I like when I played this scenario? It has a lot of traffic in the beginning, and you're actually just going from one red signal to the next. Welcome aboard 6VO3 bound for Shoeburyness. We're currently awaiting passing traffic before continuing through London. Alright. So you can see we're not on a 47 anymore, we are on a class 66 in the DB Schenker livery. And this shed here is configured in a way that the safety systems are already on. That is something new, no? TSC is not isolated, AWS is on. So they decided to give us a locomotive that has already the safety systems enabled. Beep. Stealth test. Check that the train is good. What do we still need? Instrument lights. And yeah, obviously we would do our brake test and everything. Boof, emergency brake works. Now we will probably not be able to leave at all because it will take forever to get the brakes released on the cars. We should apply the parking brake if we are doing our brake tests. Looks good. The train consists of 16 well wagons loaded with MOD equipment. You'll be traveling on the up relief line all the way. And we now have those mine resistant, ambush protected 6-wheel cars that we are transporting on the same cars that we transported. Parking brake applied. Yeah, we will release it. It's a sparkling experience. How long is our train? About 300 yards. That means 900 feet. That should be okay. And they are sending us away. Don't be fooled by the 15. We're starting in a 10 siding. Wow, what is going on with the train length display? Yeah, this is on the Great Western Express route. It is totally sparkling for whatever reason. Some settings are clashing there, obviously. Why it sparkles so heavily. Now it is counting. No, I don't want to speed. I have to stay below the 10, not the 15. Warblock says, there is a remaster upcoming for Great Western Express. Yes, if I remember right. Also, about a week ago, we went for a train driver assessment for Southeastern, but failed 2 tests. Oh, that's too bad. I hopefully will pass next time. 6 months waiting process to apply again. Well, I'm rooting for you at any rate. So now we are out of the siding. We can go faster. 60 it is. But the signal is red. So I hope you did not fail because you gave answers that you heard on my videos. That'd be too bad. Now it cleared to yellow. Well, guys, I am so happy that your real world train driver and train driver apprentices are dropping in on my stream. I really feel honored. So we can go a bit faster. We're still under caution, so let's not overdo it. Well, if we go there with 15, then we will block the line forever. Unfortunately, the remaster for Great Western Express has been set back in time. Actually, it was within the 0 to 3 months category at some point in time, and then it was moved to some later date on the roadmap. I think 30 miles is okay even for my heavy train. And passing the caution signal. At least you can distinguish the yellow from the red signals in this DLC here. Unlike with some other more modern British DLCs where the red and the yellow sometimes seem to blend into each other. But now there's a lot of red ahead. So signals, why is it with you? Well, you stand all red. And here's already an overspeed sensor loop. Oh no, I hope I did not stall the train completely. But this happens quite easily. You brake, and then all of a sudden the brakes on the car really bite. And then you stand. And then you have to start riding against the red signal. That is always a difficult thing. Whether this is actually allowed. You are just too nice. The CD radar. Well, that's true. I try to be nice sometimes. Yeah, and now it turned. I was hoping that it would switch, and in the end it switched when I was at the point where I couldn't release the brakes anymore. Sometimes. Well, as long as there is no reason to not be nice, I try to be. Thankfully not from the videos, though it has been valuable insight. It was one to do with a dots test where you find dots of 4 in one group, crossing them out when you find it. Yeah, so what tests your concentration, right? And the second one I felt was the trainability for rules and procedures part 2 dials test. Throughout all the tests, both speed and accuracy are measured. Accuracy was good, speed was not, sadly. Oh. Well, then let's hope that it is going better next time. It's always better that the accuracy is good and the speed not so much than the other way around. So by this scenario has a difficulty rating of 1, while the other one that we played has a difficulty rating of 4. In my opinion, this is totally the other way around. Here you always need to pay attention. That you don't run into a red signal. Even though ours is the green one, I think. The red one that we see is for the line that comes from the left behind the platform. So I hope I'm not mistaken here. Yeah. There's one line running around the left side, yes, and we see the green banner repeater. That means we can actually go a bit faster. And guys, look what we are approaching here. A splitting distance signal. Yellow to the right, green straight ahead. I wonder if this signal actually works as it is supposed to. Unlike the splitting distance in the Cathcart circle line. Is that correct, or should the yellow be dark? I remember something from Cathcart. I'm actually not entirely sure for what route it is, probably to the right. I think it makes sense the way it is signaled here. If the next signal on the right... No, I think it makes sense, because the junction to the right would have been red. We don't see that, and for that the single yellow is, I think, the correct one. We'll have to look into the routing there. But I think if that was for the turning right at this switch, it would make sense. Now I have to slow down again because we are under caution again. Maybe I can throttle down if I'm starting to apply the brakes. That yellow one is probably ours. I usually like the PBL braking system on the Class 66. But I need to be more careful. I'm tending to brake too much. What I like on the Class 66 in the game is that you have a working flow meter for your brake pipe that you can actually go by. And the repeater tells us that the next signal is yellow, and now we can see it with our own eyes. Now it is green. So if you like chasing the yellows, then this scenario is just perfect. There are so many TPWS overspeed sensor loops in the track, but I'm not entirely sure whether they are actually implemented in this DLC. Might be that you can see them, but they don't work. And back to the single yellow, oh boy. I was watching the class 99 the other days as Roblox 15 on test on a YouTube video, not in UK, looks to be B mode or even tree mode. Alright. Class 99. That is another thing that I have no clue about. But with multi-mode engines, we can always come back to our Vectron and the assortment of different pantographs on the roof. So This is a slow scenario. That requires a lot of concentration. Bush running down the flowers. Hit the AWS magnet for the red signal. And blim. Now it turned after we got to the go wire point. Maybe we can speed up now a bit. Any rate, we got a green. Again, some intermodal trains in the sidings. There's also a head code 6 train, so maximum 60. This is from the petroleum cargo line with the red tank cars. Yeah, here you can see why this is an old DLC. There's nothing on the ground, on the meadows. The scenery ends after a couple of meters next to the line. And again, a yellow. Double yellow, but the single yellow is already in view. Probably don't want to be much beyond the 30 miles at the single yellow on a heavy train like this one. red signal ahead. And it cleared to yellow. So coasting on 25. And here's already the next AWS magnet. For the red starter signal. That switched to yellow. Managed to stall our train. Those cars really bite you in the ass if you have them on good timing. Probably can't even switch it on the cars. Probably set to goods and that's it. Stop in 1.2 miles, that cannot be so far anymore. Going to slow down to 15 in the yard. Dude. Junction signal is position 1. Rumpf, rumpf. AWS signal for the Rev 1. Typically we should be slower at this point, but we can already see that it gives us the subsidiary signal with the 2 white dots. Can pass it. Don't even have to hold down the PZB override. Here's the 15 indicator for going to the left. Acton Yard. And here's our 15. So, getting closer to the 3-hour mark. Voice is getting to its limits as well. And we have 300 yards to go. I wanted to go to the signal. Good progress so far. Traffic only gets worse as we approach central London. Well... Oh no. We got docked for speeding in the 15. The speed clock on the Class 66 is less forgiving than the one on the 47. Alright guys. That's it for today. Thank you so much for staying with me all the time. 3 hours of military cargo trains in my unboxing stream about the Cargo Line Volume 4 and DLC that has been released this afternoon. Guys, I wish you all the best. Have the greatest of times. Take care. Be nice to each other. Abyss, have a good night. And see you soon. On Sunday there will be a stream about Preston Carlisle. I'm not sure what we are doing, whether we are playing a scenario or whether I actually work up something that I can make a presentation about. Depends on what I find in the DLC. I did not have the time yet. Tomorrow I have to work. So maybe I should find a way to go to bed. I'll pop up if I can this Abyss on Sunday. Thanks for the stream, Roblox50. Always a pleasure. All the best to you as well. Take care, guys. Bye bye.